Well, I can honestly say, Madge, I have never seen anything like it in my life.
Oh, isn't it thrilling? Now, you stay right here.
The path to TV heaven for Simon Templar, better known as The Saint, wasn't discovered by this chap. Sadly, neither was it down to this chap. Or this chap. And it definitely wasn't down to this fellow. This fellow tried, unlike this fellow who didn't. And as for this chap, well, we'll save what he did to The Saint's career for another time. It was this fellow, Leslie Charteris, who put The Saint on the road to TV heaven. As a matter of fact, he did a little more than that, for it was he who, in 1928, documented The Saint's first adventure in a novel entitled Meet the Tiger. He was born Leslie Charles Bowyer Yin in Singapore in 1907. It was his third book, Meet the Tiger, that introduced the world to Simon Templar. Who knows where an idea comes from? The Saint was just originally a character who came to life in my head, not so long after I started writing. But he was not the first character I thought of. He was, as a matter of fact, the fifth. I went on and created 2 or 3 other characters, each of them in an individual book. And then I suppose I got lazy, or I got the idea that it was better to continue and build up one character than to spread yourself around among a dozen. So I looked back over the characters I'd created so far, and I picked the Saint. I liked him the best, and decided to go on with him. Charteris wrote 21 Saint books throughout the 1930s, and by the end of the decade, they were being published around the world, with editions in England, America, South America, Italy, France, East Europe, and many other countries.
I've read some of them, and I loved the one that was dedicated to me, The Saint in Action, which hoped I may meet a saint someday.
RKO optioned The Saint in New York, but a planned 1935 movie was deemed too violent by the Hayes office, and it took another 3 years before Charteris's Brighter Buccaneer would appear on cinema screens. When he did, in the 1938 form of Louis Hayward, it was a great success, and over the next few years a series of B pictures, with George Sanders taking over the halo, were made with moderate success.
I think Simon Templar first came into my life long before acting did, because I would see George Sanders as saying, George Sanders, yes.
The earlier films of, The Saint were sort of stiff upper lip, very sort of high-class sort of guys who did this.
He was an amazing man, George Sanders. He actually committed suicide when he was 65, and he had told David Niven 15 years before. He said, when I'm 65, David, I shall kill myself. Very sad.
It was early in 1945 that saw The Saint on American radio. He was played by Edgar Barrier, and the show was written, produced, and occasionally directed by Leslie Charteris. And later that year, Brian Ahern picked up the halo for a 13-week run. Ratings weren't great, and the show wasn't recommissioned. The Saint took a 2-year break from the airways before returning in the form of Vincent Price.
The Adventures of the Saint, starring Vincent Price. The Saint, based on characters created by Leslie Charteris and known to millions from books, magazines, and motion pictures. The Robin Hood of modern crime is now transcribed for radio, starring Hollywood's brilliant and talented actor Vincent Price as the Saint.
Anything wrong, Captain?
Nothing serious, Mr. Templar. Just coming down here for a check. Go on just as soon as we can.
Oh, and where is here?
Headstone, New Mexico. Used to be a big silver mining town, but now it's just another little town, I guess.
Price's run ended in May 1951, and actor Tom Conway took over the lead for a few months before the show was cancelled altogether. It was, in fact, a friend of Charteris's who would prove to be key to bringing the Adventures of the Saint to television. John Paddy Carstairs was a writer, artist, and director, and had got to know Charteris through his work in directing the 1939 George Sanders film The Saint in London. Being freelance, one day in the early 1960s he popped into the London offices of Tempion Films to see his friends, film producers Robert S. Baker and Monty Berman.
I had read the Saint stories as a kid, and always admired them, and I always thought that the hair was absolutely wonderful subject for television.
John Paddy Carstairs wandering in one day to Barbara Monty and saying that he knew Leslie Charteris.
I happened to mention, we were looking for a television series and Saint would be great. He said, well, it's very funny you should say that. I had lunch with Leslie Charteris yesterday. He's over here now. I said, well, could you arrange a lunch for Leslie Charteris and myself? He said, sure, no problem. So Monty Berman, myself, and Leslie Charteris had lunch together.
With Carstairs' help, Baker and Berman got an agreement in principle for the TV rights.
How I managed it, I don't know, because Leslie is rather a mercurial figure, and I persuaded him to give me a 3-month option, free of charge, on The Saint. I said I thought I could get the show going.
Baker initially took the show to Brian Tesler at Associated Rediffusion, but he balked at the proposed budget of £16,000 per episode. So then, Robert S. Baker went to see TV mogul Lou Grade.
I was invited to a charity dinner. I found myself at the table with Lou by myself. I went over and moved over to Lou and said, Lou, I've got the rights of The Saint. How about a television series based on The Saint? He says, Saint is a great idea. He says, I've always read the books as a kid. I love to do it. Come and see me Monday morning.
After some discussion, Grade, well aware of the potential international sales of the series, agreed that the initial 26 episodes would be shot on film, and he upped the budget to £30,000 per episode. To help adapt Charteris's stories for the small screen, Baker and Berman hired a Canadian story editor by the name of Harry Junkin, a decision that Charteris would grow to dislike.
But then, all writers, original writers, they don't like to see their work copied by somebody else and changed and altered. So he was a bit vitriolic.
We tried to accommodate him as much as possible. He would make suggestions. If we could include the suggestions, we did. If we couldn't include the suggestions, we just didn't. It was simple as that. We had a show to make. Leslie had sold the rights. And we were trying to do the best for the show, not for the worst. I mean, we weren't trying to ruin Leslie's work. We were trying to improve upon it.
He sent some horrific memos to the writers, or to Harry Junkin, who was the script supervisor.
One memo he sent was, I think, very craftily worded.
This script is fit for Junkin.
I showed it to Harry Junkin, who fell about laughing. He kept the memo. He said, "This is the prize one. That's absolutely great."
Harry Junkin was jokey, but they were also, majority of them were so serious because they had a job to do and they had a lot of work to get through.
His gift was that he was an absolute master at editing scripts, and it has to be a gift. It's not something that you can teach or you can learn simply.
Initially, the producers wanted to cast Patrick McGowan, but he wasn't enamoured by the Saint's unsaintly way with the damsels in distress, and both Baker and Berman felt his style wasn't sufficiently tongue-in-cheek as the character demanded.
Lou suggested I meet Patrick McGowan, who was making the series called Danger Man over here. We started talking about the Saint, and he said, well, suppose you give me a script and I don't like it and I throw it out the window, what will you do then? So I said, I think there's no further purpose in continuing this meeting.
But apparently, amongst other things, McGowan wouldn't kiss a girl on the screen. It wasn't that he had any gender problems, it's just that I think he had more religious problems about it all.
But he didn't like kissing girls on screen. He's very Catholic.
He has uneasy relationships with women on the screen. You never see him holding a woman or kissing a woman or doing anything with a woman, so he was quite wrong.
Actors not considered for the part include William Hartnell, Kenneth Williams, Gene Barry and Jean Marsh. And who writes this rubbish? Sadly, Ian Ogilvy wasn't available at the time. And so it wasn't long before the producers came knocking at the door of 34-year-old Roger Moore.
When someone said, Roger Moore's over in Italy making a movie, He's not under contract anymore. Maybe we can approach Roger Moore. I said, absolutely perfect. I mean, he was Sir Lancelot, the right sort of age, the right sort of looks, could do action and so forth.
What is it? He said, well, you know, it's a television series that Lou Grade is going to do, and Lou wants you. Okay. Let me read the script.
Roger read the script and phoned back immediately and says, yes, I'm on. I'll do The Saint. So that's how we signed Roger Moore.
I think he portrayed the Saint well, and I think it became quite popular for people to watch.
Moore signed on for the new half-hour show, only to get a small surprise from the mighty Lou.
And I was with an agent called Dennis Van Taart at that time. And I said, Dennis, this is an awfully long script for a 30-minute show. He then called somebody in the office in London who said, no, it's a half-hour series. So on the basis of a half-hour series, I went ahead. I thought 26 or 39 episodes, it's half a year, and doodly-doo.
We had a meeting at ATV House with Lou Grade, introducing myself, my partner at the time, Monty Berman, and Roger, to announce the new series of one-hour shows called The Saint.
I said, half hours?
I said, no, Roger, 1 hour show.
I said, oh dear, I have a contract that sort of is based on a half-hour series, and this is sort of doubling it. So there was a little change in Lou's favour, of course.
It worked. I mean, if we couldn't have gotten a better person anywhere than Roger to play the Saint for 6 years non-stop, and that's an achievement in itself.
I thought he did a very, very nice job.
Roger Moore brought many different attributes to the character, not least his eyebrows, and helped define exactly who Simon Templar was for a new audience.
I don't think that when I started doing The Saint that I was conscious of anybody else having done it.
The character of Simon Templar is very clear in Leslie's books. He is a rogue, he is a thief, he only attacks people that deserve to be attacked, as it were.
He was a devil-may-care, elegant Englishman who fought crime and saved ladies in distress.
Simon Templar, according to the Flyleaf, the closest way I can think of describing Simon, or Sebastian Tombs, which he used as his cover quite often, never getting far away from ST, could use the same language. Simon Templar was, as Charteris described him, a modern-day Robin Hood.
Later on in his career, the Saint would point out that I am not a respectable citizen. I shoot people and I open safes. I'm not popular. People send me bombs through the mail, and policemen are always looking for an excuse to arrest me. There isn't any peace or stability where I'm around.
The Saint, of course, we suggested he never actually robbed anyone, but he would do something and claim 10% from the insurance people to return the jewellery that was stolen or something like that. So we found a moral way around the Saint's attitude.
Robbing the rich, but not the rich, robbing the evildoers, the sinners, taking back what they'd stolen, and putting things right in his own way.
The Flyleaf for Follow the Saint remarked, Mr. Charteris is amazing character, popularly known as the Robin Hood of modern crime. No deeds of daring lie beyond the limits of his prowess. No language is too tall in which to record his saucy exploits. It is excellently well done. Meanwhile, the News Chronicle claimed, the Saint is a dashing daredevil. And the Daily Telegraph remarked, the Saint is a roaring adventurer who loves a fight. The ever popular Liverpool Post remarked, the Saint, that exhilarating character. Well, they are from Liverpool, after all.
Now it came to adapting him for television. We had certain no-nos that we couldn't use. For instance, in the books of the Saint carries a knife up his sleeve. Well, knives that I made a decision were definitely out. They weren't going to be ever used in the show, and we never used knives in the show. The Saint always had to fight fairly. He couldn't kick anyone in the balls or do anything like that. So he had to fight by the Marquis of Queensberry rules. So there were certain adjustments that we could make.
Of course, the character of Simon Templar wasn't the only thing the producers bought from Charteris.
The figurehead of the Saint, the stick man with the halo, was invented by Leslie Charteris and registered by his company. So, in point of fact, he had all rights. No one could use the stick. They could use the stick man. That's not the problem. But he couldn't use the stick man with the halo. So, consequently, when we did the deal with Leslie Charteris, we also bought the rights to use the stick man and the halo as part of the show.
In an attempt to make the show more appealing to the viewers, a rather unusual idea was struck upon. Why not have Mr. Moore address his audience directly?
I'm waiting for an old friend whom I haven't seen in 10 years and who's been married for 9. The question is, what's his wife like and will she like me? What do you suppose would happen if women used no makeup at all and faced the world as nature intended them? It's a frightening thought, isn't it? You know, Monte Carlo's always the same. A marvelous masquerade of marble, mink, music, and millionaires.
I think the fun that there was in The Saint was that having settled into it and having this idea of addressing the camera, so you're taking the audience in with you, you're with them. So we could go off in different directions. We could have fun with it, or we could be very serious. But invariably, I played it tongue-in-cheek.
The Saint are fairy stories for adults. This is what they are, really, if you analyse them. You have a hero that is almost impossibly good-looking, impossibly brave, against impossible odds and always winning. So you're in fairyland. So why not take your audience into fairyland with you?
You know that it's just a bit of fun. It's not. Don't take it too seriously. Except when the man holds the gun and all that sort of thing. Yes, fine. That's later in the third reel. But
the Saint would direct the audience. In other words, the Saint was talking to everyone in their living room. It made it very personal between him and his audience. The empathy was there between it.
It was never meant to be terribly serious. In fact, it wasn't meant to be taken seriously at all. Because after all, every episode opens with this device of his face, and he looks up and there's the halo.
Honey, this is one of the greatest friends a guy ever had. True blue, honest as the day is long.
I take it you're the world-famous Simon Templar.
John, this is Simon Templar.
Between Denise Dumont and the famous Simon Templar.
So, with our hero in place, only one thing was missing. His trusty steed. No, not that steed. His Volvo.
We started the series, and obviously the Saint had to drive a motor car. You know, he has to have the Saint's car. And so the first thing I did was to start phoning around all the car companies to try and see if they would loan us a car for the series. I'm ringing around Mercedes, and I'm ringing this one and that one. And the Mercedes said, well, we could let you have one for a day, you know. I said, I'm talking about a series that's going to run for a minimum of 12 months, you know, probably starting off with 13 episodes. And I was in despair. So we had a meeting with Roger.
And I said, let's get 2 cars, you buy one for the company and I'll buy my own personal. And if we should have second unit out, or one unit on the stage and need 2 cars, you always use mine.
So I rang back to Jaguars, who had turned us down for a car, and I said, look, you know, I said, it actually pains me to do this, I said, but Mr. Moore, who is our star, is going to buy a car and use it in the series, and so I would like to accelerate a delivery of a Mark 10. And this guy said, well, I'm sorry, he said, you know, we can sell all the cars we can make, he said, I can't give you any priority in delivery. And I couldn't believe it, because I mean, you know, the advertising potential, the free potential for the loan of a car was just astronomical.
He said, but you see, but this is for a television series that's going to be shown around the world. Well, what do we need publicity for? We have $25 million with orders we can't possibly fill.
So with that, I thought, well, I give up, where do you go from there? So I was talking with friends, and a mate of mine in the special branch said, Johnny, so I saw a car driving around the West End the other day, a new one, a sporty looking car, it's something called a Volvo or something. So I got on to and found out where this showroom was, and I said to Roger, apparently there's a very nice... He said, I'll go and take a look.
Within 2 days, we had them taxed and on the road, the two of them. And they were very good Volvo, because every year they would change, having bought the originals, they would change them.
That was the start of almost putting Volvo on the map in the United Kingdom, maybe more than the UK. And from then onwards, whenever Roger travelled anywhere in the world, when he arrived at the airport, there would be a Volvo car, available for his personal use. And, that's how it started.
Very ingenious. You've come a long way since your Scotland Yard days, Martin. Hello, Miss Chambers. How's Merrill's portrait coming along?
All right, I think. She's a lovely girl.
Yes, a pity her father's so impossible.
He can afford it.
We'll see.
The series debuted on October the 4th, 1962, with the first 12 episodes keeping viewers in front of their televisions on a Thursday evening right up until Christmas, which wasn't bad, considering they weren't watching Ian Ogilvy.
I just can't wait for my next assignment. Me, working for James Bond.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so excited. You're not just teasing me, are you? You really are James Bond.
The second series debuted on September the 19th, 1963, and production had been extended by 13 episodes, meaning that this season would run until March the following year. But not everyone was happy. Leslie Charteris, seeing his stories adapted for TV, let loose in print with his thoughts. That typically synthetic product, emasculated by innumerable taboos and shibboleths, and cramped into a pattern of antiseptic mediocrity, with the sole objective of making it inconceivably inoffensive to any sponsor, and hopefully saleable anywhere, bears no more relation to The Saint that I wrote, as many faithful readers complained to me, than Winnie the Pooh bears to Captain Blood. Now, this is no disparagement of Roger Moore, a very charming fellow indeed, and a personality actor who cannot help portraying the Saint as he would have looked perhaps during the first half of his career. Now, the defects are in the mentalities of the producers and their script department, who sensed with infallible talent that the Saint was different and devoted their best energies to making him conventional. And initially, American TV networks felt the same. Between the first two seasons, Lou Grade flew to America, intent on selling the Saint to one of their TV networks. Vice Chairman of NBC, Mort Werner, on seeing one of the episodes, declared he never seen so much crap in all his life. CBS and ABC also failed to sign up to the Saint, and so Grade was left to peddle the show to the smaller syndicated stations. Meanwhile, the show went from strength to strength in the UK and in many other countries, and when Grade went stateside again in 1966, NBC put it in their schedule as a summer replacement for the Dean Martin show, competing against CBS, who were playing first-run classic Hollywood movies. Much to the surprise of the short-sighted network executives and this narrator, The Saint beat the movies, and the executives realized they wanted more. Well, quite. While the success of the show may not have surprised those making it, Leslie Charteris, on the other hand, was taken aback. Despite all the distortions and emasculations which shook up a probable majority of hitherto faithful readers of the Saint books, that first TV series was a big hit in Britain, where it was made, and many European countries, and was even fairly successful in the United States, although presented in most areas at such impossible hours that only chronic insomniacs, night watchmen, or veritable fanatic fans would have caught it. Indeed, the American success was remarkable enough for NBC to become interested in putting the show on their full network, in colour, and in what is called prime time, a promotion which had never before been offered to any series previously established in syndication. But despite the apparent success, Charteris remained distinctly unconvinced. Many of the results, fulfilling my worst forebodings, were lamentable. But many of the so-called adaptations of my own cherished stories were no less lamentable, after the weird wizardries of television production had got through with them. Some of those adaptations, in defiance of every contractual safeguard, had been almost unrecognisable anyhow. Oh well, I guess you can't please everyone all the time. With the show's place in television history assured, it wouldn't be long before Simon Templar returned to our screens, but this time in colour.